persistence pays off. There is a reason why that saying is there, is because statistically it does eventually come out, and you just were battling, you know, birth date, things are going, you know, that way. So you were fighting that also. But, you know, if you go back and look at your cycles, you know, you got better each time you did this. So you learn something each time that you do that stimulation. And I don't, you know, going to Colorado, I think was good just to get perspective, and that's a really good program. But, you know, it's just everybody's an individual, and sometimes things just, they work better one place than another.
Right. So. And it's timing, maybe. I mean, perhaps.
Right. And well, like I said, I think the last cycle you did here, the one that worked, you by far had the best response and the best number of good embryos, and it just, I think you eventually just learn, this is, for you, this is how things work the best, and that's part of why persistence pays off. You eventually understand that, you know, you can't fit you in a slot and that everybody just gets exactly the same treatment. Everything's modified, you know, based on how you're responding.
I remember though, even after this 5th time, you know, the numbers came back, showed I was pregnant, but we still weren't 100%.
Well, because of past experience, it's just a nervous time, and it's just, you know, unfortunately, statistics are that it's just, you lose 1/3 of those pregnancies that have positive pregnancy tests. So that's why it's really important that programs don't talk about pregnancy rates.
What do you tell other women and couples that are in our same shoes? We're not alone in this journey.
Absolutely, yeah.
What do you tell them when they have gone through the trials and tribulations?
I don't think there's one thing you can say. It's not like this is a speech and there's one thing that you can tell people. I think it likewise is very individualized. Sometimes it is probably better to stop. It is, if it's ruining a relationship, if it's causing too much stress in a family, then sometimes maybe that isn't the best pathway. I mean, your situation was much different. Your husband was, you know, completely supportive and was invested in this, and that makes a big difference if you got that support at home. If the woman's having to battle that issue as well as the maternal drive that's pushing you to do stuff, and your maternal drive was strong. I mean, you were going to get this done no matter what, and I think that carries over in your career and everything else you do. Sometimes it may not be the best thing, but there's enough times where I think you just have to, you know, plod along and look at it as a learning experience. And as long as we're making progress, it's going to work. I think the odds are very good that most people, given enough time and unfortunately costs, and both emotional and financial, you can get pregnant. I mean, it's not that this can't happen. It's just sometimes the journey is difficult, and it may be, for some people, is just not appropriate.
It's not a straight path.
It's not a straight path, and you know, hopefully there are milestones along the way that you say, okay, I'm making progress, I'm getting done what needs to get done, but it's not just a gimme.
Yeah. Is there new medical advancements coming down the pike for IVF that can maybe help couples get a better idea that the chances are better, or something along those lines?
Well, I think we keep hunting for better screening tests so that you can tell people ahead of time, here's your reasonable chances of getting pregnant. Using an age is so crude, but we just don't have any better way to evaluate it. So everything is stratified based on age, but I tell people more and more, your body doesn't know how many times you've been around the sun, so there is no magic number. There's nothing magical in biology that happens at 30 or 35 or even 40. It's just a gradual slope of a change, and everybody is, their pitch of that slope is different. So there's no one thing that you could say. We keep hunting for better tests to screen. Lab is probably, the laboratory support is probably the single biggest thing that's changed over the past 10 years. That is, the retrieval technique is about the same. Stimulation protocols vary a little, but there really are not any significant drugs that have changed over the past 10 years. So that there may be subtle things that we do, but it's still more individualized than anything. So it's the lab where the biggest success rates have, that's made the biggest difference in success rates. And now we just have to figure out more what the biology is of an embryo actually attaching to the wall. And that's the one part we lose control once we transfer that embryo into the uterus. And we don't have a good understanding of what needs to happen in that uterus technically to make this work. We know biology-wise, well, the embryo has to hatch and that has to attach, but what the proteins are that are involved, and that's where we need to learn. Because if you look at our cycles nowadays, if we start in with a cycle, we're transferring embryos 97% of the time. So almost always we can get an embryo to transfer. But our live birth rates are a drop off from that, and that's worldwide. That's the problem.
How do you get it to stick?
How do you get it to stick?
Oh.
And the lab has new solutions. One of them is called embryo glue to try and help this embryo stick a little more. We always made jokes about getting some super glue or even gum or whatever we need to do to get it to stick. But that's where the problem is.
Do you know how many babies that you have been responsible for?
No, I mean, it's in the thousands. So I've been doing this a while. So now, if you figure we do, 400 or 500 a year, and that's down a little bit from maybe the 600 or 700 we did several years ago, over, I don't want to own up how many decades that's been, so it adds up.
Does it's more than a job for you, Dr. Schmidt.
Yeah, I said even if I win the lotto, I'd still do this. There's nothing quite like seeing that pregnancy occur starting from scratch. So.
Okay, so truth time. When I came to you that 5th time, and I said, I can feel it this time, which is a phrase I'm sure you've heard a million times from women. What did you really think?
As I said before, I think your maternal drive and your persistence at doing this was part of what makes one say, okay, I think we're reasonable to do this. And looking back on, having unfortunately had a loss, but having conceived, you go, all right, we're just not beating our heads against the wall. And I think it reflected, like I said, in that last cycle where we did learn enough from your previous experience to say, all right, here's how we're going to adapt it. And it did work better. So you're the motivation that got things in gear again. And husband came along, and we certainly had looked at it and hadn't thought, oh no, we're just wasting time or doing stuff to you that you shouldn't do. So I think that was really what was the deciding factor, was your motivation.
Is the most difficult part of what you do, though, having to tell a couple sometimes when you just see it medically and know that it's not physically possible?
It's for all the pluses that you have in seeing conception occur, seeing an embryo grow and then conception occur, having to say, I think we need to close this chapter or make a significant change in what we're going to do. That's just, sometimes you just say, I'm almost going to cry before the couple does, just because it's disappointing. But I think there are times where there is an end, and you just don't need to keep abusing yourself.
But that is kind of the beauty of what you guys do here at ORM, because you help those families find that path.
I think it's just, you know, I don't know that I want all seeing powers and be able to look into the future and stuff, but you wish you could, you know, always say, here's the pathway you need to go because that's what's going to work. And from a couple sitting here for the first time, not knowing, you know, what the future holds, and they're just trying to time their cycles and trying to do that, you just can't pick all the time which one should be a gimme. This should be just time intercourse better and things will work out fine, to, oh my God, you got to do 5 in vitro cycles, you know. And when you came, it was, you know, we knew we were going to have to do some stuff, but it turned out to be much more involved than I would have guessed based on how young you were at the time.
Well, I heart you, Dr. Schmidt. Can't thank you enough.
Again, you did all the work. It's just, we just stood around and, you know, perhaps we're cheerleaders at times.
If that's what you want to call yourself. Okay. Thank you.